Rob Grimes with the IFBTA, and it's my pleasure to be introducing Kronos to the industry as our newest global industry partner member, and also Amanda Nichols, who is the Senior Manager of Industry Marketing for Food Service. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
So we have Kronos, who clearly has certain industry verticals they've focused on. Many of those verticals that you're the strongest in globally, cover food and beverage as well. But you're also talking about people who are forward thinking, which the way I take that is there are forward thinking coming to the food and beverage industry and the restaurant industry in there, but at the same time you didn't say that that's all you were going to focus on, the forward thinking ones.
Right.
What you're actually saying is that there's now this opportunity that they're waking up and seeing it. So in reality, you want Kronos to be a thought leader.
Absolutely.
In this specific space. So if we talk about Kronos as a thought leader in food and beverage technology and in the labor and workforce management side of this, what are the key areas that you believe that you bring to the table that the food and beverage industry needs to be focused on, that Kronos is in a unique position to really be the thought leader?
Yeah, and I think it kind of ties back to this technology disruption that we're on the verge of. Our sweet spot is the labor management, it's the labor forecasting, and we all know that labor is, if not the number one expense within a restaurant, it's one of the top expenses.
Right.
And in parallel to that, we also have the lowest unemployment we've ever seen. We have some of the highest turnover we've ever seen in restaurants. We have some of the lowest engagement levels that we're seeing within our employees. So restaurants today have a huge challenge. They need to control that expense on one hand and make sure they're optimizing the labor force, as best possible to control, protect those thin margins. But they also need to put their best foot forward and become an employer of choice so they get that top talent and they get the talent coming to their restaurant rather than the restaurant next door or rather than the retailer down the street.
So if we can hold on that, there's really two specific subjects here. I don't think anybody would argue that food cost and labor cost are probably the biggest variables that you control. But there's one major difference here, that on food cost, you're controlling waste and you're controlling portion sizes. It's somewhat controllable, and you have a shelf life of a period of time. And that shelf life, if not prepared, can be 4 or 5 days, maybe longer. If it's prepared, obviously the shelf life is a lot less, like 5 minutes or whatever it is. But they have some control on that. On labor, if you don't use the right labor and you don't schedule properly and you don't deliver service properly, because it might not just be a scheduling thing, it could be service levels are impacted by it or skill sets are impacted by it, you can't recover it once it's used. I mean, there is no shelf life, right? So it almost as if the labor component of this is actually, it's equally as important in cost, but it would sound like it's more important when it comes to actually the control and the thinking of, how do you actually manage that, analyze it, and then take actionable steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that Kronos is trying to bring to the table. Because to do that well and to do that properly, you need information. You need all the data available to you. You need to understand, what skills and certifications your employees have, what stations are qualified to work, what, trainings that they've passed, so that you're putting the right employee in the right position. Or if it's during a slower period within a restaurant, you want to make sure that you're having the employees on the floor that have that broadest set of skills so they can move from the fryer to the grill to even bartender if that's, part of your organization and part of the skills that they have. So understanding all of that data, and then most importantly, having it accessible and easy to use. A lot of the challenges that we've had with data is they tend to be locked in a black box, and it's very hard to get in there and read the data, understand the insights, and the last thing that we want to do is have a data scientist show up in every restaurant trying to understand this. So we need systems and tools and technologies to bring the most important and valuable insights, pull that out of that black box of data, present it to the managers and the operators and the leaders so they can take actionable steps based on the data that the system is bringing to their attention.
But you really have to be able to take that data and slice and dice it and present it in a format that's as good for the shift manager or supervisor as it is for the person who's managing, a region or the company, right?
Yeah, and this is sort of where our, 40 plus years of experience in workforce management come into play, because we know the type of data and the type of insights that managers need to make these decisions. We know that, for example, they want to know when a minor is approaching the threshold of the hours that they can work, so that they're someone that they don't ask them to work additional shifts and sort of go into a gray area within compliance. We know that managers tend to be very concerned about overtime. So we've got alerts built into the system to let them know when employees are approaching overtime so that they can make smart decisions. And that decision may be to keep the employee on because they've had an unexpected rush, but they also may be, pushing the thresholds of their scheduling budget or their labor budget. So they might want to make the decision to let that employee go for
But
the
we
day.
recognize that information comes from different sources. Some people might choose Kronos to be the all-in-one, and some people might choose Kronos to be the center of truth and gaining different information and feeds in there. So regardless of which way that they're working with Kronos, your analysis and presentation of the data has to be complete at the end result.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Absolutely. So we've developed our system so we can bring in data from multiple sources and it's housed in one central location so that managers know that when they're looking at a piece of information or a piece of data,
Right.
they know that it's accurate and they know that it's true.
Right. But when you think about data today, I mean, and you're cloud-based, so you can actually connect to a lot more data sources. You think about the sources that come from on-premise, which clearly, or around it, which is the red book. It's what comes from the point of sale. It's what comes from the production and things like that. But actually, there's a lot of external sources that can be feeds as well that should be behind the scenes that a person doesn't see that impacts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked about learning management systems, but guest satisfaction surveys are another great piece of information and a great data point that restaurant operators can utilize to better manage their
Okay,
workforce.
so how are you going to take a guest satisfaction survey, which, by the way, may be done electronically after the fact, and how are you going to do that, and how is that going to impact what you're providing in enabling them to manage that?
So we can tie guest satisfaction surveys to a particular point in time and a particular guest that was in the restaurant. And then based on the schedule and the schedule that was worked, we can understand which employees were working that day. So based on pulling this data together, we can identify some of the more top performing employees that lead to a higher guest satisfaction or lead to a higher check value or more additional services.
So clearly, if you're talking about guest satisfaction, that's something that happens after the fact because they're going ahead and they're filling out some sort of score, card on it or doing something like that. I get it, if you talk about, knowing people are going to go overtime and things like that. But how can you actually use, how can Kronos impact the operation as it's going on right now to make changes that increase guest satisfaction, service, things like that?
So we can pull in data from drive-through times, from 12 times, from table turn times. We can pull all that data into the system and process it in real time and then serve up notifications to the managers. For example, this section's running a little slower. You might want to see what's going on here. Or drive-through times are a little slower than they typically are. Maybe you need to move someone over to support drive-through. So by bringing in different data from places like that, you can make more intelligent in-the-moment decisions and really manage your staff in the moment to help drive some of these efficiencies.
Well, actually, if you think about it, there's some other changes going on in the industry today that could help because you're already saying that you have open APIs and you can go ahead and you're not trying to be everything to everybody, but you'll connect to those things. And obviously the challenge for any operator is to try to have real-time data when the person's there to make the correction, right?
Right.
So there are factors that they look at and there's some new tools and technology that maybe could be tied in that would help. One might be people counting, that's there. Another might be, a lot of people are doing, either pay at the table where they take the comment card right when they're there. So you have an assessment, I guess. Or they have the tableside kiosks, that you can go ahead and put things in. Dining room management, you already said drive-through, but there's probably some newer feeds that are available today that weren't available 2 years ago to actually sense how things are really going.
We could even pull in social feeds. So if we're seeing in the moment that somebody's tweeting about a less than optimal experience, we can send the manager or the server right to that table. But I think the biggest benefits today is some of these things that we're talking about are very, very new. And there's going to be even more coming in the next few years that we can't even predict, we can't even think about. But the way our platform is designed is the openness and the extensibility gives you the ability to bring in these new innovative technologies that we don't even know exist today and that we can't even comprehend.
And a lot of them actually don't cost that much money, the operator, to do. We covered the Consumer Electronics Show a month ago. And one of the technologies they had there is just facial recognition and telling if a person's smiling or not. And, if you would picture yourself, and people counting, of course, but if you would picture yourself scanning a dining room or a line, and you have unhappy faces there and you're able to get that feed on a real-time basis, to make adjustments to staffing or moving people around because you have that data as well and skill sets, to be able to react. But really, at the end of the day, it's about bringing it all together in a single place, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And what that means to one restaurant is going to be different from what that means to another restaurant.
Right.
So we try to work with all of our clients on an individual basis to help them build out a technology stack that meets their particular business
Right.
needs.
But the key is that you have all the pieces that are focused on industry specific
Yes.
types of things and actions. And it's a matter of, it really doesn't matter where the feeds are, but as time goes on, there's going to be more places.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And we have a very wide partner network today that has a lot of different
Mm-hmm.
partners that specialize specifically within the food and restaurant industry.
Amanda Nichols, welcome to the IFPT. I'm not going to welcome you back to the industry because you started in the industry, right? But it's great to have not only Kronos be a member, but also have your participation as well. And it's a pleasure to meet you today, and it is an honor to really have you join us, as our newest global industry partner member. So thank
We're
you.
thrilled to be here and looking forward to see where the journey takes us.
Great. Well, thank you.